Giancarlo Garcia and Xavier Morozic-DeJesus, where Garcia actually went 15 for 23. He had 282 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. But the big problem that's kind of been happening all season is the running backs. They've flawed all year.
Absolutely. Not something that we've been able to trust and rely on so far this season, especially in games prior as well. And we'll get to it in a second, but against Elmwood Park is when they really started to shine and flourish. But, yeah, really they had to lean on Xavier Morozic-DeJesus heavily in this game. He had 9 receptions, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns, a Randy Moss, Calvin Johnson-esque performance from him that really led them to victory over this really tough team.
Yeah, and I know you're probably jealous that you missed half of that game. It was me and Aiden Sheff in the booth, but it was a fun game to announce because it felt like every time the ball was going to him, some exciting big play was happening, and it was something that we haven't seen all season. It's kind of the first time we got to see us really using our receivers the correct way. But let's go on to some other receivers like Jaden Karras. He had notched 55 yards, but only on 2 catches. He had a very long catch, which was mostly yards after catch. It's great to see that from Karras. Sadly, we won't be seeing Karras tonight due to suffering from mono.
Yeah, it's tough to see him down with an illness. We really would have needed him for today's game. Glenbard East is on a 6-game win streak, so we really wish we could have had that weapon in our offense, but unfortunately we're going to have to be without him. Luckily, though, our defense held strong against Glenbard South, and we're hoping they can hold strong again tonight. Max Strong had 6 tackles, 10 assists, and 1 tackle for a loss in this game. Oscar Aguirre, also a standout player as a safety with 4 tackles and 7 assisted tackles as well. Other names such as John Evans and Luke Ferguson both putting in the shift as well.
Yeah, exactly. And John Evans and Luke Ferguson aren't really the guys that you hear a lot from the defense. But Luke Ferguson got his name called, and he took advantage of it, got a big pick from the line. And John Evans was targeted on a deep ball. He actually had 2 receivers around him, and he's the one that came out with the ball. It was a very impressive play from John Evans. Hopefully we see some of that today, as we'll need to hold back that Glenbard East offense.
Yeah, the smooth operator himself. I believe that was his first pick of the season.
I think it was.
Great to see him get that and build up some confidence heading into Elmwood Park the next following week, where they won 56-21 in what was easily the most dominating performance we've seen from them all season.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, they came out firing on all cylinders. They had 408 total yards of offense, which is by far the most that we've seen all year. 171 passing yards, 237 rushing yards. And this wasn't only just Giancarlo Garcia. We got some playing time from Bubba Novak, you know, the JV quarterback who has been in some talks for possibly playing some varsity football next year. He's been the more experienced quarterback, but obviously doesn't have the build that Giancarlo Garcia does. But heading into Garcia's game, he went 10 for 15. Both their games total were 10 for 15, 171 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick with a long touchdown of 59 yards.
And then on his feet, he was even better. He had 9.1 yards per carry and 10 carries, 91 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, and a 21-yard long rush. He's much more lethal on his feet we've seen so far this year, scribbling outside the pocket, going on the run, kind of improvising on the fly. That's where he's most successful, and we'll probably see a lot of that tonight as well. Yeah, for sure. And talking about on the feet, on the ground game finally had some success as Damian Renteria had 12 carries for 80 yards. That's 6.7 yards per carry. He had a 15-yard touchdown. It was the best game we've seen from Renteria all season because he's really been the RB2 behind Ratana all year. And then Ratana himself had 6 carries for 37 yards. That's 6.2 yards per carry. Another notable stat as well. 2 touchdowns. And then Bubba Novak got in some reps at running back as well. Unfortunately, kind of a blemish on his stat line was the fumble that he had, but he also did have a rushing touchdown to accompany that. So not all negative for him in his first varsity performance. Yeah, another guy that stepped up big time was Warren Mason. Usually we see him on the defensive side of the ball, but he actually got more offensive reps. He had some big plays. He had 2 receptions for a big 81 yards. That's 40.5 yards per reception. He had a 59-yard touchdown, and both times he got the ball, they were both touchdowns. Definitely stellar performance from him. Hopefully we could see more of that tonight with Jen Karras out of the mix. We're going to need him getting those reps in at wide receiver as well, so he's going to be kind of playing a Travis Hunter role for RB tonight. And the defense, actually, this game was not as successful as previous games. Elmwood is notorious for their air raid offense, and they weren't able to stop it for the most part. Elmwood had 3 passing touchdowns courtesy of their quarterback, Matthew Fritz, including a 45-yard touchdown, a 19-yard touchdown, and a 5-yard touchdown that was followed by a 2-point conversion. But in the end, none of this mattered because RB walked all over Elmwood on offense, scoring 56 points.
Yeah, I mean, if the defense can't pick it up, the offense for sure did, which has kind of been vice versa from what we've seen the rest of the season. But hopefully the offense can find it out tonight, as they did against Elmwood Park, where pretty much every stat line that they had improved from Elmwood Park's game compared to the rest of the season.
Including their 3rd and 4th down conversion rates, which were absolutely dismal before this. Yeah. But in this game against Elmwood, they went 3 for 5 on 3rd down, which is a 60% conversion rate, and they were 1 for 1 on 4th down, compared to previous games where they went 0 for 1 on 3rd, 0 for 2 on 3rd, 0 for 2 on 3rd again, and then 0 for 2 on 3rd a 4th time. Just absolutely horrible stats. And but now they're starting to convert on these 4th and 3rd down plays, which is better. Yeah,
and that'll be a pivotal stat line to keep in touch for this game, because if we can't get past the 3rd down, we can't rely on those 4th down plays, leaving Glenbard East in some good field position, as they do have a phenomenal offense. But let's talk about an offense that kind of struggled, was the Bulldogs last week against West Chicago. Giancarlo Garcia, 13 completions out of 23 attempts, 150 yards. He had a touchdown. He also threw an interception, though.
The bright side, running backs has played another somewhat solid outing, with Ratana leading the volume now. 13 attempts for 51 yards, as opposed to Renteria, who only had 3 attempts in this game, going for 22 yards. So not great all so far from Giancarlo Garcia at the helm, but running backs were able to take a little pressure off of his back in only a 10-point performance. Yeah, something that we haven't really seen much this season was actually out of the receivers is it was a very spread out offense. We had consistent touches from Xavier Rosa de Jesus, obviously, Nico Caputo, Nick Rivera, Warren Mason, and James Long. Xavier Morozic had 4 catches for 45 yards, leading the Bulldogs receivers. Caputo had 2 receptions for 38 yards, which is top of the notch from what he's had the rest of the season. Nick Rivera got his name on the board with a touchdown. He had 2 receptions for 31 yards. And then Ren Mason had 2 catches for 20 yards. James Long was his most involved in the offense he's been all season, recording 3 receptions for 16 yards. It's great to see our senior guys, our veterans, finally getting in those reps there. And Nick Rivera getting his first touchdown of the season, which has been a long time coming for him. And the defense, while they did show bright sides in terms of individual stat lines, overall their defense was not able to stop West Chicago's triple option, a unique formation that they ran throughout the game, a scheme that RB was not able to stop, unfortunately. Yeah, something that we've seen in the past games is RB's success rate against the air, which was proven in the Glenbard South game where we had John Evans getting an interception, Luke Ferguson getting an interception. We haven't really seen a team that just runs it straight up the gut every play, and especially out of a triple option, that's really hard to stop if you're not prepared for it, and that got the best of the Bulldogs. And that dropped their record of 4-4 on the season, going 2-3 in conference, although they are listed as 2-2, keeping them in 4th place, but that might drop once that game is registered into the system. So looking at the conference as a whole and the schedule, RB has been on a up and down season so far. Roller coaster. You have them winning against Niles West at home in their first game, losing to Hinsdale South and Ridgewood right after that, followed by a win away against Elgin. And then you have a loss against Fenton, which was kind of a momentum killer there. Yeah. And then when we thought maybe RB had turned their season around, 2 incredible winning games against Glenbard South and then Elmwood Park. But then most recently we have another loss by West Chicago, kind of taking their momentum once again. Hopefully they can get back on track and get into the playoffs with a great performance tonight, though. Yeah, obviously, they're going to need a big game to get into the playoffs. This Glenbard East team is not an easy team to take down, and it's going to be even harder to shock them than it will be to shock Glenbard South, who got killed by Glenbard East. I believe it was 41-7, and the 7 points came in the 4th quarter. But let alone if we shock Glenbard East today, we need to shock East St. Louis, a nationally ranked team who's playing a top 10 nationally ranked team, IMG, today, which is possibly the game of the week for all Illinois football. If we can get a win, we're going to be in a lot of trouble, but we need an upset. Possibly the game of the week nationally. Yeah. This is a nationally ranked game. Some of the 2 top programs in the entire country that are going head-to-head, and it's going to have major implications for RB. Let's talk about the last time they played against each other, which was in their 2021-22 season, where in the first round, once again, RB traveled all the way out to East St. Louis, and they got their butts kicked, unfortunately. They lost 66-0 with Luther Burden III, a top-ranked NFL draft prospect right now who is projected to go in the first round, playing for this East St. Louis team, which obviously did not help. Yeah, it lit up the Bulldogs' defense. There was not much, going into that game. A lot of the players actually weren't even allowed to take the 6-hour road trip to that game. So let alone
they were facing the top team in the state. They were also down some of their top players, which clearly showed as we didn't put up a single point and let up 66.
Yeah, but like you said, the players, they just did not want to even come to the game. I feel like that shows the difference in grit between that team of the past and this team that we have now.
Yeah.
I feel like this team that we have now is much more mentally resilient than a team we had about 3 or 4 years ago.
Without a doubt.
They were literally asking their parents to miss the game because they didn't want to go against this team and get their butts kicked. I know for a fact, though, that this team of players that we have now, if they do go and face off against East St. Louis, none of them are quitting. They're all going out there with the most possible amount of passion they can have, and they're going to try to do whatever they can to get a result.
Yeah, and now that we're done talking about the past, let's move on to the present in Glenbard East. We talked about their season so far, the 7-1, 5-0 in conference. They have just been a force to be reckoned with. They already clinched the conference title. Tonight would just, put another cherry on top of that. They're looking to put a 8-1 record to rest for the season and head into the playoffs. They have been on a hot streak. Each one of their games since week 2, they've put up 41-plus points. And this could be a serious problem for the Bulldogs.
It's also worth mentioning that they're a much larger school compared to RB.
Yeah.
They're going to compete in the 7A playoff bracket as opposed to RB competing in the 6A bracket. And they have a 2,255 student enrollment size. Absolutely huge. But another thing worth noting is that while they are the conference champions of the Upstate 8 East Division, their only loss came against West Aurora, who is the current champions of the Upstate 8 West Division.
Yeah.
They lost 45-20 September 6th, so almost 2 months ago. So they're on a red-hot streak. But that kind of just is a testament to how the Upstate 8 West Division is a little more challenging than the Upstate 8 East.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously 2 pretty good groups of divisions here, but I mean, when the champions of one division's getting blown out by 20-plus points to the champion of the West, it kind of shows which division proves to be stronger.
Absolutely. Even South Elgin beat 21 against Glenbard East 22-6 in the 2022-23 season, which was their last season in the Upstate 8 East before moving. And South Elgin currently sits second in that division, the Upstate 8 West, which would make me assume that they would also most likely beat Glenbard East this season as well. So 2 teams there that I believe are better than Glenbard East in quality.
Yeah, let's talk about some things that need to be better today as we move into Keohane's keys to success. My first key of the day is to maintain a strong defense. The 7-1 Glenbard East team didn't just get to 7-1 based off of luck. They have, again, been a force to be reckoned with. That offense has been something you don't want to mess with. They've put up 41-plus points in each of their last games since their Week 2 loss against West Aurora. And when the ball's in their hands, it seems like a good thing's happening every time.
Yeah, and then I believe another thing would be to minimize the turnovers. Yeah,
without a doubt. If the Dogs want to sneak out with a win today, we need to keep the ball in our hands and keep it out of the other team's defensive hands. They showed in their last game, I believe it was their wide receiver, biggest player on their team, first play of the game against Glenbard South, takes a pick 6 to the house. And that really just turned the tables on how that game was going to go. Later on, they had a pick 6 from their defensive line, which shows that their heads are on a swivel on all parts of the field, and if we want to sneak out with a win, we have to keep the ball out of their defense's hands.
And this could be especially troubling for RB, considering even against Elmwood Park, a team they absolutely destroyed, they still had 2 turnovers in that game, 1 interception and 1 fumble. Granted, it was by their JV player, Bubba Novak, but still, they need to take care of the ball.
Yeah, without a doubt, because this offense for Glenbard East is, again, I've really said this twice, a force to be reckoned with. It's almost every time they get the ball in their hands, they are getting to the end zone. And to leave them with good field position is the worst nightmare for the Bulldogs. My third take of the day will be get pressure to their quarterback. Something you'll learn from watching film on this team is that Michael Nee, their quarterback, has a phenomenal arm talent. And that only can happen if he's able to get time and men downfield. If guys like Myron Bia, Andrew Olivares, Caleb McCautry, if they can get pressure to him and eliminate his deep ball, our linebacker core and our inside safeties, inside cornerbacks, that will help them succeed heavily throughout the game.
That's a great point. They need to take pressure off of their secondary, which we know can get beaten a lot at times. They need to take pressure off of them by getting to the quarterback early so that ball is not thrown.
Yeah, and my last take of the day will be to establish the short game. We are down a pivotal player in our offense in Jaden Karras. He has been the short game kind of master for our team. He's been the guy that if we're running a jet sweep, it's probably going to him. And he's the guy that will get long yardage off of it. But we are only down to one of our top 2 receivers in Xavier Morosi de Jesus, and it's only going to take a certain amount of time until Glenbard East finds out that he's our guy on the offense and throws a shadow man on him or throws 2 people onto him.
Yeah, let's hope that with these keys, RB can maybe have some success against this really tough Rams team. But the saying goes, it's not about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and Joes, which will take us into our next segment, Hickey's Pickies, where I'll talk about my players to click, that need to click for this game on RB, starting with number 1, Giancarlo Garcia, who first and foremost, it's a no-brainer. He needs to be in control of this game. He's going to be the player where the whole offense runs through. And so far, in terms of his stats and for the whole conference, he's been absolutely phenomenal. He has a 93.2 QBR on the season. He leads the Upstate 8 East in both pass yards and total yards with 1,218 and 1,648 respectively. And they're going to need him to get going both on the run, which we've seen before, that he's the best at, and as well in the air. So that's one of them. The other one is Xavier Morosi de Jesus, who will now take an even bigger role with Jaden Karras out in this offense. Now, we know he is unfortunately coming off an injury, and we're going to have to hope he won't be receiving limited volume because they're going to need every chance they can get of him on the field. He needs to have another stat line similar to the one he had against Glenbard South, where I'll remind you again, he had 9 receptions for 198 yards and 2 reception touchdowns. Absolutely insane. And currently on the season, he sits second in conference for total receiving yards. So, Giancarlo Garcia, we're going to need to keep seeing that connection between those 2 players.
Yeah, we kind of need a little Puka Nacua-esque game from last night. Puka jumped in after really getting 2 practices in off of his injury, and he was established right away. First play of the game, ball went to Puka. We need to do that for Xavier Morosi de Jesus.
Absolutely, and then unfortunately, one of my other picks to click was Jaden Karras, who we have now learned as a game-time decision, he is now ruled out of this game. So ignoring that, my next player will be Andrew Olivares, who is arguably the most improved player on this entire RB varsity squad. Coming into the program as a sophomore, he wasn't slated to start, wasn't supposed to get any minutes at all going into the season, starting against Niles West. But that quickly changed once head coach Sam Stoller saw what we saw as fans, which is that he is an absolute stalwart, both defensively and offensively, at the center position and as a defensive lineman for this team. He actually holds the varsity program lifting record for squatting 455 pounds. And once again, he is only a sophomore. That is how much better he's going to get on this team. It is absolutely insane. And they call him Meatball to make things even better.
I mean, that just proves he's a force to be reckoned with. I mean,
yes. So with T-minus 5 minutes heading into kickoff now, we'll take it out from here as we go into the booth. So long from the studio, and stay tuned for more coverage of the game coming up. Thank you.